It's actually, this sikh was said originally by Fabrenga the Rebbe in Tafshin Yudalad on the date of the Friedrich Rebbe's Chasna, Yud Gimel El. The Friedrich Rebbe's Chasna was Yud Gimel El Tafresh Nun Zayin, and in Tafshin Yudalad the Rebbe Fabrenga on that Shabbos Parsh Kiteitzei was Yud Gimel El was the Kviyas, and part of the Nikud of the Sikha, or one basic in this, the Sikha is about how one deals with marriage. The famous word about Kibbutz Bayis Chadash, Vasisa Michael Gagecha, but here the Rebbe goes into a whole Arichas Dikir idea. So, especially in a house full of simchas having to do with marriage, it's definitely appropriate to learn this Sikha. Okay. Oidus mitzvahs Maike Ksiv.
He's coming, Avodah?
Yeah. So, another very interesting thing about this is there's a lot of times the Rebbe says that there are certain things that according to Nigla we don't have a full explanation of what it is, and we need to come on to Chassidus' explanation, because in Nigla there's like a question and they don't really fully answer the question to explain how and what. So, and for those situations, we need to come on to Chassidus to help understand and answer those questions that Nigla doesn't answer. In this case, not only is the Rebbe going to point out that there are certain questions that remain according to Nigla, you need to come on to Chassidus to explain, but in addition, the Rebbe is going to say, why? Why did the Torah leave it in such a way? Why did the Eibishter leave it in such a way that according to Nigla, according to Pshut Shemikra, whatever, you can't explain it, and you have to come on to Pnimius HaTorah. So this could be another. After he comes to the questions, he's going to give this whole introduction that you need to have things that are beyond our intellect, and for that we have in Yonim that Chassidus comes to answer. Oidus mitzvahs Maike Ksiv Aleph Kisivne Bayis Chadash Vasisa Maike Legagecha Ve'ein Muvan Madu Namar Bayis Chadash. He's buying a home. Yoshon, Laloi Maike. He bought a house. Let's say he bought it from a guy. The guy didn't have a Maike, so he has a chiyuv to put a Maike on it. So even in such a situation, he has a chiyuv of making a Maike. What's the taich? Bayis Chadash. It doesn't mean literally a new house, but it means Mishas Chadoshasai Aseloi Maike, or Mishas Chidushay Aseloi Maike. What's the Chidush? What's he trying to tell you? The Bayis Chadash is not trying to tell you that when you build a new home, but as soon as it's new for you, that's when you have the Chiyuv Maike. What does that mean? Hainu. Chiyuv Asiyas Maike Chal. Loirak lacheris yashus vabayis kechiv mezuzah el miyad begmar binyan habayis mishas chadshasai. In other words, like this: buy mezuzah. If you buy a house and you're not living there, there's no chiyuv mezuzah. When you buy a house but it doesn't have a maike and you're not living there, you're mechuyev to put on a maike even before you live over there. That's what it means, chodosh. When it's still new for you, you don't wait till you're already moved in, and that's when you can put on the maike. So the Rebbe says, even after that explanation of the Sifri, avol adayin ein loshon hakosim chaveres legamri. Kivin shechidush ha-Sifri hu shechiyuv maike chal ala adam miyad kishenasa bailov shel habayis oid koidem meis yashvus boy. As we just now said, Madua Ramaz Akasav Sadin Hanal b'mitzvahs Maike b'loshon tivne Bayis Chadash shememena mashma shechiv Maike rak Bayis Chadash. There are different expressions that the Torah could have used. V'loi b'loshon hamadgisha shechiv hamaike chal al kol Bayis miyad ksha Bayis nichol shusay. In other words, there could have been a different expression that the Torah would have been clearer to give you this point. You didn't have to use the word chadash that could make you think, only if I'm building a new house, but if it's an old house, I'm not going to have a chiyuv maika. And then you have to explain to me, you know what chadash means. Chadash means as soon as it's new for you, as soon as you bought it, even before you moved in, you're mechuyev in a maika. There are simpler ways of saying it. There's easier ways of saying this message without using the term chadash, which can be misleading. Derech Hagav, again, this point is something that we see throughout many Mamor Chazal, that there's different ways how we learn things out based on Yud Gimel Midas Torah and Adreshes, etc. There's different ways of learning out halachas. And in Nigla, they're never going to ask, why does the Torah say it this way? Why doesn't the Torah say it straightforward? Instead, I got to learn it out from an extra vav, or I got to learn it out from a gzeira shava, or a hekish, etc., etc. Kacha. In Nigla, there's not that type of question. All you got to know is the rules, how we learn out halachas from. Al pi pnimius HaTorah, that's why there's shivim panim l'Torah. In other words, how did the Eibishter deliver all different types of messages in the Torah? Because the fact that the Torah chose to say something in particularly this way, so first you could know the Nigla halacha, you could also know the Pshuta Shal Mikra, and you could learn a deeper concept, Al Pi Pnimius HaTorah. The same thing over here. Al Pi Nigla, it should have said something simpler. It shouldn't have used the term Bayis Chadash. There would have been other ways to express what the Sifri says, that as soon as you're ready to move in, as soon as you have the house even before you moved in, you're mechuyev in a maika, without using these words. It's only Al Pi Pnimius HaTorah that tells you that the Torah is trying to tell you another message over here. And that's why the Torah uses this unusual language. Base. Another part of the pasuk that says about mitzvahs maika, b'hem sh'chakasav nemar, hatam al asiyas maika. The reason for making a maika. In footnote 9, he says, later on the Sikha will see, it's not just an idea of a footnote. It's not just an idea of a tam. Al pi pshuta shel mikra, it's a tam. Because a person shouldn't fall. Ki yipol hanoifel amenu. Ein muvan alei hakosav mazir kan. Keneged v'koydem anafila. Why are we making the maika? So you shouldn't be able to have a noifel. Im kein echza koyre kvar hakosav yipol hanoifel. But Gemara mevor als you know why he's called a noifel? Ro is a lipo mesheishes mebreishes. Really, this person that fell off the roof that didn't have a maika was supposed to fall. There's nothing that happens without the Eibishter's direction. Ella. So if he was supposed to fall, why do I have to be worried? Why do I have to be concerned? Why do I have to put up a maika? So therefore, I have to do whatever I can not to be the shliach, not to be the means through which the Eibishter finds a way. The Eibishter will find a different way how he should be a neufel if he has to be a neufel. Elam shemayne ze hevi Rashi Pirush al Torah val derech limit apshat shemikram tira zainem lechureinem mechuver or mechaver shekein neufel Pirushay loy ra'ui ze lipa Elam lashon hoive v'shem atoyer neufel mamish. Neufel means that he's actually falling. So again, how does shlo yipol someone that's gonna fall? Neufel is not the way how it should be written in Pshuta Shel Mikra. To answer all of this, so first of all, the Rebbe is going to put down the answer is going to start Nois Gimel, but the introduction that we said before, that there are certain things that we can't understand al pi Pshuta Shel Mikra and al pi Nigla. You need to have dafke Pnimius HaTorah. And why did the Eibishter set it up that you should need to have dafke Pnimius HaTorah? That whole thing he's going to explain now in his base. Isa Pirkei Rabbi Lezer asher atam shebara HaKadosh Baruch Hu sa'olam b'ofen gezeh sheruach tzfoinis lo yushlamam k'maimer the Chazal say olam lachsadra hu doime v'ruach tzfoinis einem suveves. There's like an open area that's not complete. Whatever that means, begashvis. Why was that? Why did the Eibishter create the world incomplete? Shim yavim mishu v'yitan. hu alaka yeshivu lo yavei v'yigmer es hapina azoi she'inach tichul. V'kavonas advarim שכדי שהנברואים לא ייתו לחשב שאין הם נזקקים לבוידו אילום ומנהיגוי, I'm a God. So what do I need the Eibishter? למשל למעלה מהם, they don't need something that's higher. ברום הקדוש ברוך הוא כך שיש במציאות some חיסרון the way they were created. And it should be such a חיסרון שאינם יכולים להשלים בעצמם. וממילא מרגישים הם את ההכרח לזקק לכוח עליון. This is only a dogma for what we're about to say. So the Eibishter built into us something that we can't fix, so that we should be able to recognize there's something higher than us, and we need that higher than us to be able to fix, to be able to be misav the ruach tzfaynis, to be able to fix it up. The same thing by a person with his mind, not just in building the world, but in a person's own intellect. כדי שהאדם שהוא בעל שכל לא ייטע עצמי שביכולתי להבין הכל בשכלוי, because that's the nature of people. Ich bin a Kopfmensch, I understand, I have seichel, for sure I can understand everything. התביע בי הקדוש ברוך הוא את ההכרח להיזקק למה שלמעלה מהשכל. לדוגמה, כדי להבין דבר שכל מן ההכרח לתפוס תחילה את המושכלות, הראשונות ואת כללי החוכמה. In English we call this axioms. There are things that are axiomatic. Before you even come into a seichel, there are certain hanachis, there are certain premises in English that you need to know beforehand. So for example, let's say begashmis. A certain scientist or the Wright brothers invented the airplane. Before they invented the airplane, there was something that was a given, that there's something called gravity. They can explain how an airplane works, but lav dafka they can explain why and how gravity works. All they know is that things don't hang in the air. And if you don't do something to make a plane fly, so then it's going to fall because of gravity. So there's a hanacha keduma. There's certain things that are lamayla min ha-seichel that are gedama to seichel. V'asher lefi klolim elu nitin lavil de maskonos ha-seichel v'asvara. So why gravity works? I think most scientists don't know why gravity works. Yeah, they're smartest or whatever. But definitely, let's say the person that invented the airplane didn't have to know why and how gravity works. But it was just a hanacha geduma. You know, you took a kabbalah so that gravity works without any reason. This is what the Eibishter put into us, that even just like a person feels that the world is missing something, ruach tzfaynis einem mesuveves, the same thing seichel can recognize and feel that it doesn't have all the answers. To be able to understand things, it needs to rely on certain things that are beyond seichel. Nigla the Torah yarad bislapshus ad la'avonas v'tfisas ha'seichel ha'enushi va'afilu shaleini Yehudi. These days especially, you have Art Scroll Gemaras, you have online, you can go online, see the whole Shas translated in English. You can sit down and learn a Blat Gemara without a problem. Ub'chadei she'yizkara adam sha'Torah gam nigla the Torah yiseichel aleki Kava Kadosh Baruch Hu Kame Inyanim Benigla the Torah Ba'ifim Kazeh Shelo Yiyeh Niten Lavinam Letachlisam Elai De Limud Inyanim Elu Kvish Nizbaru B'Pnimius HaTorah. And that's why he says in the footnote now, he says a very interesting thing. There are certain things that the Gemara will say Kasha. An Amoida asked, it's a question. And the Gemara can't answer the question. So we say that the halach is not according to the Amoida? No. Even though that the Gemara comes to the conclusion that's a kasha, and I have no answer. The halach is still like that Amoida. How come? Because Nigla itself shows you that there are things that's beyond understanding. The classic thing is that it says, that says over there, in those halachas it speaks about that there was a machlokes between Rav and someone else, and they asked him a question on this shita, and shasak Rav, and the halacha is that even though Rav couldn't answer the question, the halacha is still like Rav. That shows that even in Nigla the Torah, it shows that there are things that seichel of Torah is something that's beyond our understanding. When you learn the Pnimius HaTorah, then you could see its godliness. Chassidus explains that everything that we learn in Nigla really has a source in Al Masal Yonim. We have this also towards the end of Tanya. The Alter Rebbe says that when Mashiach comes, we're going to learn the halachas the way they are in Al Masal Yonim, and from them we will know how to do the halacha l'maisa appoiled down here. So it's not pshat that we have a halacha of, let's say, Shor Shanog Chasapora down here, and then we have the way to Ruchnis, the other way around. It came from the Chachma of the Eibishter, which is Chachma Ilah. And then it had to travel down here, Nasav Yarda, until it came down to speak about a Shor Shanog Chasapora down here below. So those parts in Nigla that are not clear and that we don't have a complete understanding of, but in Pnimius HaTorah, in its Shoydish, you do have. And that shows that Torah is not an intellectual thing. It's really something that's Seichel Alaki. Falls into these categories of things that are be'etzem, not understood in Seichel Nushi, and you need to have Seichel Alaki to explain. Lefi habir apnimi b'inyan ha'maike yuvan shechiyav ha'maike kosher lebinyan Bayis Chadash, even though in halacha it doesn't have to be dafka Bayis Chadash. Ki Bayis Chadash, according to Pnimius, hu inyan ikri b'toichen ha'pnimi ha'maike. Val derech zeh yuvan gam loshen yipol ha'noifel asher oid koidem shenoifel migagecha hareyu kvar noifel. And that's what we're going to talk now in the Sikha about how this is all Pnimius Inyanim, these two things. Amr Chazal, Beisoy zu ishtai, like it says over there, that by the Kohen Gadol, that he has to be mechaper about Beisoy, since Beisoy zu ishtai, so the Kohen Gadol has to be married. And not only does he have to be married by the Avodah Yom Kippurim, but they even prepare for him a second wife. If Chas Shalom, his first wife, passes away, he'll right away marry, so he should be able to have the Chipur Ba'adoi Ba'ad Beisoy. So we see that the pasuk, when it uses the term bias, is going on Ishtoi, and also Rabbi Yossi said it. Ad Sham Rabbi Yossi miyamai lo karisi li ishti ishti ela li ishti beisi. He said it's about different things. He said it's about his ox. He called it a field, and so on. Because of Tigisiv Nebayis Chadash, it's going on. The koyal zman has cholas chaya nesuyin. That's why it's Chadash. Kasher Adam noitlal atzmai as a rechaim b'tzavoroi, as Isaskus b'parnosa gashmias Adam choyrish Adam zereya, that responsibility is something that hits him mainly when he gets married. Kafim meres ha'toyra kisivna Bayis Chadash v'sisa ma'ike me'achar shezo Bayis Chadash. What does it mean Bayis Chadash? Seder v'avodah chadashim shebehem adayin lo yhurgal. He was in yeshiva, or even if he wasn't in yeshiva, still in all, he didn't have this type of responsibility. He didn't have to invest himself completely in this, and it wasn't the gay him benefesh. So he wouldn't have a paycheck this month. Mela, he'll survive. He's a bacher. But now he has a family, he has a wife, he has kids. He's got to take care of them. It's a whole different ball game. He's totally immersed in it. This is the gay benefesh. Yesh lasis ma'ike loy dai binyane azihiris shahoy loy beifane avodah hakoidmim. Elachayv ulakabel al atzmai gedarim v'siyagim chadashim. Fences. Lasis yag la Torah. Lahaschil seder chadash al hagbolos v'zihirus v'machshava v'dibur v'maisa. So the question is, why then? Vatamel ze shazhor the mic in the dreshes davke Avodah Chadash zu mamshach hakosov ki yipol hanoifel mimenu. And this is the second question that we asked. Why is it noifel that he is actually being noifel? Me'achar sha'avodah zu kshura im etzla adam im tnua shel yirida v'nefila l'gav matzavi ha'koidem. He is the noifel. The person that has the Bayis Chadash is the one that's noifel. He is now in the state of nefila. Not because he has to make the maika to prevent. Now, because he's building a Bayis Chadash, he's in the state of yirida nefila. Why is that so? Neches asks begash misa oilam he al derech al klolos yiridas nishmasai oilam hazeh, and that's also called the yirida and the film igra ramal bira mikta al kain yesh makim lachshash shegash misa oilam toiridan madrigosai, and therefore vim lo yazor biyoser beis bniyos is a Bayis Chadash hine lo yizul vad. Which is the purpose of us coming down into this world. So he's already a noifel just because he got married. If he doesn't make a maike, if he doesn't make gedarim v'siyagim, if he doesn't put new protections into place, so then as much as he was a noifel before, he will fall even further. It'll fall down even worse. And he says that again, the Ari speaks about this, that there is different levels of Yeridas HaNetzotzes. There's first of all the way the Netzotzes fell down here into this world, and then there's further, if I don't use the Gashmis in the right way, if I use it just Hashem Taiva or so on, I make the Netzotzes that would say in Klippus Neuged, Alter Rebbe says in the beginning of Tanya, go into Gimel Klippus Hatmeis. So there's something, the Netzotzes of Kedusha are already Neufel, and the person, if he's not careful, he can make Yipol on Neufel. Then the Netzotzes of Kedusha can fall even further. Bayis, the Rebbe says in Ois Dalet. So now we spoke about a person getting married. Now he's going to talk in a bigger picture. The Neshamah coming down here Lamat. Bayis koil lefamim gam al gufa adam. Uba'avodas Hashem harei ze koilos avodah aklolos de birudim levaderes aguf es chelkim ba'olam. There's two pratim in a person's avodah. He has to be mevarer his own body, and also whatever part of the world he comes in contact with, he has to be mevarer as well. Va'avodah zu nikras Bayis Chadash. Again, the whole question that the Sikha began was with the word Chadash. Why is this idea of the Neshamah coming down here to this world, why is it called a Chadash Tika Avodah? Ki Aleph, the Neshamah, Koig Miridas Alamata, Ein Kol Musig Bazeh. The Neshamah has no understanding and no appreciation of Dvarim Gashmi. It's like, it's brought down that just like by us, we don't understand what's going on in Atzilus, in the worlds of Bri, Yitzirasi, and so on, and we don't understand what Malachim are, what Neshamas are. Yeah, we have a little bit, Chassidus talks a little bit, but we don't really have it well understood. It's the same way the other way around. The Neshamas and Oilmas Al-Yoinim have no musig. That's what it says, Taka, that when they're learning Shorish and Nagas Apara, they're not talking about a Shorish and Apara Bagashmias, for the simple reason that the whole musig of Gashmias is foreign to them. They don't understand. Shor is a davar zar, Parla is a davar zar, the whole idea of kinyan and Begash is a davar zar. So l'chatchila, Torah by them, is all ruchni, is the way it's Noel Mitzal. So therefore, a Neshama coming down here into this world, it's a chadash. It's a totally new world. He never saw these things before. Beis, b'avoida zu, nifal achidush hamiti. So the Rebbe adds another thing. Chadash, in the first explanation, was a chesaron. It's something new that the Neshama doesn't know about. Here, Chadash, the Rebbe says from the word chidush, that now the Neshama has something new, a maila. He accomplishes something above and beyond which he couldn't do when he was in Oilmas Al-Yoinim. Valderech hamavur b'negiel leishavas oilam hazah gashmi she'av sheyeshnam kam b'madreges b'seider ishtalshus hamishavas b'derech ischatshus mishoshon and mekoyrom. And the Rebbe is going to go bekitzer what those different levels are. There's klolos ha'or shalachriat tzimtzum u'inin she'ischatshus. After the tzimtzum arishan, all the oil that came, that's something new in comparison to before the tzimtzum. Ak Adam Kadman Nikra Adam the Bria. Bria means Yesh Ma'ayin. That's also a Chiddush. Yesh Ma'ayin. Something from nothing is a Chiddush. HaKelim da Atzilus, Hamin Sheyesh Mayim is brought down in Chassidus. The Oiris of Atzilus, that's called Gilui HaHelam. The Kelim are called Yesh Ma'ayin. Again, a Chiddush. While Achas Kam V'Kam Oilam HaBriya is a Chiddush in comparison to the worlds beforehand. But with all of those Chiddushim, it doesn't come to the real Chiddush when this world was created. Mikol Makom HaMitis in HaChiddush, Udavke B'Yisavas Olam Haza Agashmi. Ukamaymar Yidua Oidis Yisavas Agashmi L'Ruchnias. Asher ein lecha yesh me'ayin gadol mezeh, and that's why it's only Atzmos that's involved in the creation of this world, because it's an amazing chiddush to make from Ruchnias to Gashmis. To go from Oir Shalifnei Tzimtzum to the Oir after the Tzimtzum, yes, it's a chiddush, but it's not such a big chiddush. Dafka Olam Haza Gashmi is a big chiddush. So in the same way, how when the Eibishter created this world, that's the biggest chiddush. The same thing, the biggest chiddush for the Neshamah is when it comes down to this world and does the Avodah in this world. Val derech zo gam ba'avodah im advarim hagashmiyim. Kiven shal hagashmiyis en kol erech l'gab ruchniis nimtza sha'avodah levarer es gashmis ha'olam. And what do you do with the gashmis ha'olam? V'lasoysa l'ruchniis. He Indian shalis chachas, just like the Eibishter. He takes the ruchnias, and when he makes it into gashmias, that's the biggest chiddush of the whole Seder Ishtalshlus. So when a Yid takes the gashmias and turns into ruchnias, that's also a very big chiddush. Not only that, but the Frierdiker Rebbe brings down the very famous Maimer. It says, Maimer Chazal, Gedolim Maisit Tzadikim Yoiser Maisit Shemayim Va'aretz. So the Frierdiker Rebbe brings down the Maimer and a few Amarim about this. Maise Shemayim Va'aretz, the Eibishter made Yesh Me'ayin. Maise Tzadikim, V'amechom Tzadikim, is we're turning the Yesh back into Ayin. That's a bigger Chiddush. To make the Gashmis into Ruchnis is even a bigger Chiddush than making the Ruchnis into Gashmis. And that's what it means, Kesivna Bayis Chadash. V'lachein oifen avodah zeh merumas b'chesivna Bayis Chadash. Zoi avodah lifel ha-Chiddush b'Bayis zeh haguf. You're going to bring this chiddush into the body. So now, in addition to the fact that the avodah is a chiddush, now the Rebbe is going to bring concerning the person that's doing an avodah, this avodah, is also, it causes by him a big chiddush of something he wouldn't have had before. Shem sha'avodah yamuri b'darech ischachus kenu gam b'negel la'adam ha'oived ha'ilu yanifel ba'adam ha'yefane avodah acherim hareyu ilu shebe'erch aval ha'idei avodah zu levarer es gashmis ha'olam mis'ale ha'adam ba'oifen shel chidush be'ein ha'roich. When he's sitting and learning, let's say, or when he's in Gan Eden, it's very geschmack. He has Ava v'yira, he's learning Torah, whatever. But the real chiddush is when he's involved in gashmis, and he's elevating it, and he's being mailet telekus. You say to him, "Avodah zupa elas gam chiddush lamayla kiviyachol." We, through our avoid in a way of chiddush, make kaviyachol chiddush by the Eibishter. K'maymer Chazal lakol b'dei shemayim chutz mir shemayim val derech maymer Chazal moisifin koyach begvura shel mayla. The Eibishter kaviyachol can't do the Yir Shemayim. So it comes that we are doing Yir Shemayim. And when we do the Yir Shemayim, which is something that Hashem can do, what happens then? We are Moisef Koyach in the Eibishter, it says. Va'ata yigdal no Koyach adnai. That we have the power to add Koyachas to the Eibishter. They have the last is Dir Leis Baruch Tachtoinim. Nas is hi Adira no. And what happens with a Dira no? It says, the Chazal say, Dira no marchivin daite shaladam. So it comes out when we make a dira for the Eibishter, we are adding to the Eibishter. We're kaviyachol being marchiv daite of the Eibishter. Marchiv and daite shaladam, adam elin kaviyachol. So again, our chiddush and our avodah causes kaviyachol a chiddush by the Eibishter l'mayla. Mitzad seder ishtalshlus yesh na'agbola kaviyachol l'mayla b'negel am shachas erleki ba'olam. Yes, no ki hayachali mashach b'toich ha'olam, top of 212. Yes, no shulam mailam in ha'olamus. Yes, nail b'zeh she'ene begeder ha'olamus klal. Comes a yid and takes something that makes no sense to be down here, and he brings it down here. V'idei avodas b'nei Yisrael nif'eles harchava v'chidush asher gam ha'oil she'ene begeder ha'olamus klal. ובכלל זה גם האור הנעלה יויסר מן האור שימלא מקום החול לפני הצמצום. Even that, the Oir and Sof Shefnei HaTzimtzum is now Nimshach Lamata. So now the Rebbe adds, how do we reach that? How are we able to bring that down? So the core of this is the idea of Bitul. The Rebbe is going to explain that this idea of Bitul has to do, and we see this in the words also of the Pasuk. Hakli l'chol inyan shel chidush hu Bitul. וכידוע בעניין העליס, כאשר מדובר בעלייה שבאין הרייך לגבי מדרגה הקדמת, מוכרח ליאס ביטל קודם העלייה, אשר הידי זה נעשה האוילה כלי לעלייה. In other words, like this, it says, ונפשי כאופר לכל סייה. And then it says, psach libi b'sar yasech. Only, the Rebbe says, when we have nafshi ka'afar, when we have the level of Bitul, then it's shaykh to really have psach libi b'sar yasech. So the Rebbe asks, what do you mean? L'chura, learning involves our mind and our intellect. But since it's sar yasech, it's the eibishter seichel, it's beyond the seichel of a person, so a person needs to put himself aside and have Bitul to be masik, something that's higher. That's also why Chachma is called Koyach Ma. Dafke, with the Bitul of Chachma, can you come up with something new? Can you come up with a new insight, a Barak HaMavrik that he didn't have before? And Chassidus is brought down, Al Derech Inyan HaAmud V'Nahar Dinur, Sheesh Laver Beis Aliyah, Maganei Natachn, Ganei Ne'elyon. It says that there's a pillar, and there's also a river of fire that the Neshamah has to go through when it goes from Ganei Natachn, Ganei Ne'elyon. Why? Because it's a very big Aliyah. And these two things, the Amud and the Nahar Dinur, the river of fire, this is something that causes a Bitul by the person, so he should be a Keili to be able to receive higher. V'zeu gam ha'toichen ha'pnimi d'makeh. B'gdorim v'siyogim. Ha'maike asher Yehudim mekim b'avodosei bo l'dei bitui t'nuas ha'bitul v'kabol soil. She'oisa oisa l'kli ha'roi l'bayis chadash. The fact that I am making myself and I'm limiting myself and I'm saying, yes, I'll be told I'm allowed to do this, but I'm going to go a step further and I'm going to make more gedarim v'siyagim than what it says in the Torah. That shows on a greater Bitul. It's an interesting thing also, he brings in the footnote, there's a word from the Mezritcher Magid, and also I think it's brought down the Shalad, that it brings down a different Sikha, speaks about Barichas, that it says that Vasisa Michael Agagyecha, Gag is something very high. So there's a person's gedula or gaiva. You have to make a maika, you have to make a fence on your gaiva. So we see it's openly on the idea of Bitul. The idea of making a maika is about controlling your Bitul, holding back your Bitul. Ubezeish levayer es hatam pnimi lekach shal derech ha'alocha siyam ha'kosav loisosam damim bebeischa ki yipal ha'noifel amenu. You remember we mentioned this in the beginning, that Kiyibol Anoifel Amenu Bepashtus is an Asinas Tam. Al Pi Pshutir Shal Mikra, it's an Asinas Tam. But the Rebbe is going to bring soon that it's not only an Asinas Tam, or it's not an Asinas Tam. Elo hu tzivui b'fnei atzmei k'de'isa b'sifri v'asisa Michael agarecha mitzvahs asay v'loisasim damu b'eisecha mitzvahs loisa. The Rebbe speaks about it. He brings in the Sikha that he says that someone wrote him that why is it that we make the Rambam says that we make a bracha on putting up a maika, and we know the Rambam also writes that you don't make a bracha on any mitzvah that's done because of sakon. For whatever reason, I don't remember now the reasons that he says that. We do make. The Rambam says you do make a bracha. So the question is, why? It's done because sakana. Why do you make a bracha? So the Rebbe says that this is takab shad, because loisasim damim beisecha is a separate mitzvah than vasisa Michael gagecha, and ki yipa anoifo amenu loisasim damim beisecha is a separate inyan. And from that the Rambam learns out that not just, and other Mefarshim learn out that not just you have to make a fence around your roof, but there's other things that because of sakana you don't do. You have to do things to prevent anything that's dangerous, anything that's a michshol, that could be something that someone could get themselves hurt with, because they're really two separate mitzvahs. Vasisa Michael is one mitzvah, like this Sifri says, and L'Sosam Doma Bayis Chadash is a separate mitzvah. So the same thing, Ki Yipol HaNoifel Menu is a separate inyan.
To keep a gun in the kitchen.
Huh?
To keep a gun in the kitchen.
It is, yeah, exactly. Mipnei she'inyan ha'maike eine rak geder v'syag al menas liyishamer min nefilas ha'adam yipol ha'noifel el zeu gam inyan ha'muchrach ba'asiyas Bayis Chadash ha'chidush va'ilui shaloi be'erech ba'adam u'lamayla kaviyachol. It's not, beforehand we said, Bayis Chadash, you're building a new house, you got to make a syag, you got to make a protection, a fence, that you shouldn't, chas v'sholem, have a yirid. But now we're saying something else. What is the idea of the Maike? That's the level of Bitul. You're making Gedarim V'siyagim, that's Bitul. Why do you need it? Because of Chadash. Not because of Yipol Neufel. Because you're doing an Avodah that has to bring down a Chiddush. An Avodah that brings down a Chiddush, you need to have a Bitul. Where is the Bitul expressed? In Gedarim V'siyagim. So it's something separate than Ki Yipol HaNoifel Menu. Ki Yipol HaNoifel Menu is one inyan, but there's another inyan that a person has to make Gedarim V'siyagim because he has a Chiddush Dik Avodah, because he's making now a totally new Avodah. Hayra Mekala Amr Ben Agel Lepoil Yesh Ladas She'asr La'adam Lifrei Sh'Listager Men Ha'olam Ela Muchrchu Livnois Bayis Lasis Dirlo Yisbarach B'Tachtoinim Va'adrabe Ayidei Hayirida Al Oifen Avodah Zeh. He doesn't lose, but just the opposite. Ba Acharkach Ha'aliyah Amitis, like we said before, that he comes to the Chiddush in his Avodah. Shenifal Chiddush Lamata by him. There becomes also Lamayla v'Chiddush Lamayla by the Eibishter Canal, like we said before. On the other hand, Uli Idach Yisat Tzarech Ala Adam Ladas Asher Kedei Las Sagashmis Kli L'Ruchnias. So he has to be focused on making the Gashmis a Kli L'Ruchnias. He can't allow the Gashmis to take him over. Chayev ulasis maike koloymar lishoyer ba'avdolah megashmis oilam. What does that mean? You just told me he needs to be involved in the world. Now you're telling me he has to stay away from the world. V'hainu shu misasik amnam binyonei oilam aval ein lem kol tfisas makom atzlei u'memela nisher muvdal mahem. In the world and above the world, like the expression goes. Mipnei shu yedeya u'margish shekol yisaskusi binyonei oilam. So therefore, since this is his whole purpose, so he doesn't care about the world. What he cares about is the mission. It's like a person whose job is, let's say, to build a house. Fine. He's got to build a house, so he has a hammer, and he has nails, and he has wood, and he has all these different things. He's not concerned in how beautiful the hammer looks, and what color, if the nails are nice color that attract him, because that's not what it's about. The nail is there for a purpose, the hammer is there for a purpose. The same thing, when a person is here in the world to make the world into a dir lo'izbarach tachtoinim, it doesn't make a difference to him how and what. The main thing is, will this serve the purpose of making a dir for the Eibishter? The first taich that the Rebbe said in Bayis Chadash. Nisuyin shekolish Yisrael hareim inyan klali loirak avuroi b'chayiv haprotim. My life, well, it's a great thing. I'm getting married. Elagam etzad l'mayla kaviyachol the kivin she'oz. He tchilas iker avedas in last dir lo yizbar v'tachtoinim harei ze poil barchivin daiti shalom de l'mayla kaviyachol am shochas ar chadash kanal. When a person is getting married, he's making a marchivin daiti shalom by the Eibishter because he's building a dira for the Eibishter in his new home. Idach yesh adas asher aderech livnis Bayis Chadash muchrecha lichlos asiyas hamayke kabolos gedarim v'siyagim chadash. So the Rebbe says, why? L'chure mi'achar shechasen moichem loya kol avay noisav hari ein tzoyrech kol kach sheyishmar v'yagbal atzmoi b'gedarim v'siyagim chadashim v'chulu, because he's done. All of his past is gone. It's all erased. When nation yanav aloy toivim shebavar kvar niskapra aloy. Al zeba ira adrabim loy zubovad she'olav l'shomer al haba mipnei shemitzad irregulose b'avoida b'olam hazah. Al chas shom l'skayim ba yiplan neufel kanasiv gimol Al Yisera Mezu Hamaike Darush Af Mitzad Inyonav Haloi Tovim Ba'ava Asher Alulim La'afriya La'amadas Bayis Chadash the Kivan Sha'olav Lis Alis Be'ilu Shaloi Ba'erech Ein Shuvase Akademis Maspika El Medreshes Menatshuva Nailus Yosel Fi Erech Ha'ilu Shal Bayis Chadash. The Rebbe says a very interesting word that in Mamar Chassidus he talks about it, that the higher a person goes, even once he did tshuva on something he did wrong, but now that I'm on a higher level, it's important for me to do tshuva again. That's why the Rambam even says this. We're holding up a Rosh Hashanah, in Kippur, El says that even avoinus sha'adam isval da'aleim b'shana sha'avra, obviously we're talking about an aver they didn't do again. He's still misvada olav in this Yom Kippur. Why? I was already misvada. I already did shuv on it. Why do I have to be misvada again? So Chassidus is because every single time I go up, so then for the higher level, my previous shuvah was not enough. A simple example is, let's say you have clothes that had a stain on it. So if it went through a normal washing cycle, so then the stain is not noticeable. But let's say if you wash the clothes very, very good, and now let's say your white shirt is very, very bright now. So on a very bright white shirt, that old stain is going to stand out more than it did before. It was so bright. Now you put in bleach and whatever else, now that stain is going to stand out more. So the higher we go, the greater we have to do the tshuva. So when a person gets married, he's going up to a higher level. He's going to Avodah Mechudeshes. So even though in Yom HaChuppah it was Meichel like Kol Avei Noisav, but now he needs to have greater in Yom of tshuva. V'cheinu gam b'negel l'toichen in Ramaika al pi mashnis bar le'el ha'avdol ha'olam hazeh. Yachal hulitoin me'acher sha'ata maschal in rechaim b'tzavari al pi Torah. Torah says now it's time for him to earn money. He's got to support his wife. He's got to support his family. It's a stira menei ubei. Ulam olav ladas adraba hatachlis shenesui ish v'ish olamatahi sheyiskayim b'hem zachu u'shchina shri b'neiim. V'zeh yavi l'bayis chadash nesui ish v'ish beruchnis bein b'nei Yisrael HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're going to make a new home for the Eibishter. We're going to make a chasna for the Eibishter. V'shnei inyanim b'zeh, that the Rebbe also speaks about at length in a different sikha in every kiddushin. Aleph hakiddushin bein bnei Yisrael v'Hakadosh Baruch Hu haimnu mashi Yisrael miyuchadim melakus beis mashaydeza asur la kula alma kehegdish. It's brought down Nigla that there's two aspects to a chasana. One aspect is that the woman becomes connected to me, and another aspect that she's disconnected from everybody else. The same thing Baruchni is. What happens between a Yid and the Eibishter, with the Chasen of a Yid with the Eibishter, we become Miyuchad with the Eibishter, and also the whole world becomes removed from us. Shenasa Adam Kaddish Umuvdul Minyane Olam. V'zois Kemidubar La'el. Mekneshu Kol Isaskusi Binyane Olam. Hirak L'Sagala Baila, only to help out and to be something to help, to be for the sake of her husband. La Hashem Esakavan El Yoyna Lasas Dirlo Yizbarach V'Dachtoinim. You see over here the Sichas from Shabbos Parshas Teitze, Yud Gimel El, this same Kviyas, this Friday, and it's the Chasen, like he says in the bottom of the Friedrich Rebbe. And the Rebbe said this on the day of the Chasen, on the anniversary of the Friedrich Rebbe's wedding.